Welcome back to Encyclopedia.Zone. My name is Dr. Don Jolly. I am a freelance writer whose work has appeared in the Los Angeles Review of Books, The Revealer magazine, among others. I am also the editor-in-chief of Encyclopedia.Zone, the internet's premier home for literary shitposting. And today, I got a little short essay for you. We're going to be finishing out the week. Anybody who's hungry for political content, I know I've been promising it. I keep missing the deadlines, but we've got a long read coming. This is the next entry in our political column here at the Encyclopedia Zone called HRC 2020. We're going to be giving you the full skinny on the race with all the news and analysis you need to keep your shit straight. But before that, we got to celebrate a holiday. It's February 14th, and you know what that means. It's the anniversary of the release of Todd Browning's film version of Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi and nothing else. I don't need to tell you that this film of Dracula, released in 1931, is worth your time. It's one of those rare movies that has so thoroughly transmitted itself into American culture, global culture, that even if you haven't seen it, you are no doubt carrying some portion of its drama and its imagery in your head. Bela Lugosi's performance is particularly remarkable in this regard. His costume, his mannerisms, these have so thoroughly colonized the character of Count Dracula, originated in Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, that Lugosi has become Dracula in the popular imagination, and Dracula has become Lugosi. His every line is a quotable quote. "Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make. I never drink wine. It reminds me of the ruined battlements of my own castle in Transylvania." In the novel, Dracula is an absent presence. He propels the story, but his appearances are few. Lugosi, however, uses his screen time in Browning's film to create a clear and still resonant archetype of horror. The aristocrat who is at once urbane, sophisticated, immensely wealthy, and simultaneously a ravenous beast who lives off the blood of his social inferiors. Christopher Lee, in Hammer's mid-century cycle of Dracula films, portrays this division with similar clarity. But Lee had red contact lenses and long white fangs and a mouth slick with fresh, drunk blood to sell his savagery. Lugosi doesn't even have the teeth, and when Browning has him transform into a bat, it looks like shit. Lugosi conveys this duality with his performance alone, with inflections of speech and contorted expressions, assisted only by little spotlighting around the eyes. For me, he's the only Dracula that counts. I'm really fucking sorry about that pun. I'm really sorry. I promise to do better next time. I'm sorry. The title of Count is essential to the macabre appeal of the character. Dracula would suck ass, not blood, if he was a stonemason or a doctor or a guy working at the deli. What is scary about him is his position. Stoker was no class warrior. He treats the working class like shit in Dracula, but it is significant that Dracula, possessing a vast fortune and a royal title, sustains himself with the blood of characters who fall below the social and financial station of the aristocrats. Mina Harker, his chief victim in the novel, begins the story as an assistant schoolmistress. In Browning's Dracula, she is the daughter of Dr. Seward, the keeper of a sanitarium, making her the product of a professional family, perhaps at the upper end of England's middle class. Dwight Fry's character, Renfield, begins the film as a solicitor, tasked with making purchases of English property on Count Dracula's behalf. He ends up in Seward's sanitarium, sustaining himself on the blood of mice and insects. Dracula, in other words, is at the top of his society's social arrangement. He has money and power and the recommendation of title. But he sleeps in a coffin, cannot face daylight, and lives only by exsanguinating those who do not share his advantages. He's a monster in a fashionable suit with unlimited funds to realize his unnatural desires. A lot like Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, is running for president. As of this writing, he spent about $188 million on it, hiring staff for salaries more than double that of competing campaigns and buying up huge swaths of airtime in every major media market in the country. But $188 million is a drop in the bucket for Bloomberg. His personal holdings total more than $50 billion. Unlike Dracula, however, he does not have a crumbling castle full of possums and armadillos, by far the Count's most redeeming feature. in Browning's film. Bloomberg is one of those billionaires, a class of people which I believe occupies an aristocratic position in America's supposedly more egalitarian presentation of its hierarchy. Billionaires do not inherit their title, after all. If they inherit anything at all, it is money. Theoretically, at least, they would cease to be billionaires if this money were lost. Also, theoretically, I could begin my life in the middle class and end it as a billionaire if I was born very lucky, very clever, and if I was willing to work hard. Bloomberg's campaign ads like to note that he was fired from a job only to build his own business from the ground up. In America, our aristocrats are self-made, which means they've earned their position of power. One of America's first billionaires, the aviator Howard Hughes, presented himself as a self-made man as well. Sure, he inherited a fortune made off drill bits produced by the Hughes Tool Company, essential to the extraction of oil. But it was Hughes the pilot, Hughes the film producer, who parlayed that fortune into international celebrity, a pioneering aircraft company, airline, and, by the Second World War, a major defense contractor. It was Hughes and Hughes alone who made it, or so the story goes. People like to say that our elections aren't for sale and that defeating Bloomberg is necessary to prove it. But of course, elections, like everything else in this country, are for sale. In 1968, Hughes paid a few hundreds of thousands of dollars, far below Bloomberg's $188 million spent so far, to the campaigns of Richard Nixon, Bobby Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, all the principal candidates, save one, in that year's presidential contest. We know all this because Hughes, unlike most modern billionaires, at least so far, spent the last decades of his life living in agoraphobic seclusion. For most of the 60s, he lived in a suite at the Desert Inn, a hotel he owned in Las Vegas, Nevada. He saw no one, kept the curtains drawn, and dispatched his instructions via handwritten note to a select group of functionaries empowered to conduct his business. In 1985, the journalist Michael Drosnin published a meticulously detailed account of Hughes' final years based on an archive of these notes. So for Hughes, at least, we have the receipts. They tell us that elections have always been for sale. They're just more expensive now than they were in 1968. In the weeks before election night that year, Hughes was ill. According to Drosnin, he had been losing blood for months, apparently from his ruptured hemorrhoids, and now critical anemia compounded by chronic malnutrition. His hemoglobin count had dropped below 4 grams, a 75% blood loss that left him leached as a week-old corpse. Unwilling to be hospitalized, he would have to leave his lair. He dared not face daylight. Hughes instead sent his henchmen in search of uncontaminated blood. Hughes insisted on knowing the precise origin of each pint, requiring a thorough investigation of every potential donor. He refused to take blood from those with bad diets or those with extensive sexual histories. He finally selected several clean-living Salt Lake City Mormons to be bled for him alone, writes Drosnin. He liked the transfusions so much he began to demand them, even when they weren't medically necessary. Hughes was always a trendsetter. Today in San Francisco, there is a boutique medical startup called Ambrosia. Check out ambrosiaplasma.com. We're throwing the plug in there, where anyone with a few $1,000s, $8,000 for a pint, $12,000 for 2, plus between $5,000 and $8,000 for shipping and handling, can buy medically unnecessary blood transfusions from donors age 16 to 25. According to their website, Ambrosia, patients report subjective improvements in athletics, memory, skin quality, sleep, and many other areas. Presumably, these other areas contain the objective downsides to these subjective boons: sensitivity to sunlight, garlic, and the Holy Cross. In 2019, the Food and Drug Administration issued a statement that such cosmetic infusions offer no proven benefit to their recipients. But the metaphor. The supposed top of society, feeding messily like animals on those they exceed in wealth. Bloomberg would eat all of us if he could, and throw a baby to his brides. When I see media hacks and CNN commentators make the case for Bloomberg, all I see is Renfield in his sanitarium cell, denying that he's so low class as to stoop to eating flies. Flies? Flies? Puny things! Who wants to eat flies? To which the orderly replies, you do, you loony! And Renfield, like Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, replies with dignity and grace, not when I can get nice, fat spiders! Anyway, that's all we got for you today. Keep an eye on the channel. We got much more coming next week. We got an update in the pipe for Encyclopedia.zone. Actually, a couple updates. So stay with us. And, don't lose your head over this fucking election stuff. Watch Dracula. Great movie. And if you like what we're doing here on the channel, hit up patreon.com/HRC2020. Really does help us, increase the output here. So thank you very much. Everybody have a great night.